Y'all, tonight I'm gonna present to you translation strategies and examples of translation in bojack horseman, my favorite show on the planet. We're gonna look at wordplay in specific. We're gonna look at puns, rhyme, and tongue twisters, which are hard in general to translate. And it's also a very essential element of the show. So it's very hard to do when there's all that pressure on it. So let's look at some examples, but first, to explain the types of wordplay we're going to look at, we've got tongue twisters, which include rhyme and alliteration, and with puns, we've got malapropisms and orthographic play and idioms. Idioms, of course, are sayings that are kind of like ingrained into the language, so that's hard, of course. Orthographic play is playing with how words are spelled. Malapropisms are substituting a different word, like the wrong word that might sound like it, and there's a bit of humor by switching that out there. And all of these are very hard to translate because they all evoke a sense of humor, a sense of, it gets the audience laughing, but the meaning also has to be conveyed. The situation has to stay the same. They have these very specific plot lines that are having to be conveyed through some of these. So we're going to look at some strategies for them. Some strategies.
Bueno, soy el único ginecólogo.
Oh, there we go. Well, sneak peek with the tongue twisters. The translators will often create imperfect rhyme, which will be like the sound endings of the words sound the same, but the whole words do not rhyme themselves. They will also keep proper nouns in order to preserve the rhyme or the alliteration. With puns and idioms, the best strategy, my favorite thing when a translator can do this correctly, is finding an equivalent phrase in the target language, which is also transcreation of the phrase. So taking the equivalent and carrying it over to the translation. It's very effective, but it's very hard to do. You have to have great knowledge of the target language. You can also substitute and create new wordplay that fits the situation. You can also omit the wordplay all completely. The wordplay might have to be sacrificed in order to preserve the meaning or the situation or the idea that's trying to be told to the audience. So we're going to look at this first example. When I press the next slide, it's going to say the Spanish version, but the English says, "I'm the only albino, rhino, gyno I know." Let's look at the Spanish.
Bueno, soy el único ginecólogo albino que conozco.
That's slant rhyme because the ending of the words are the same, but the whole words don't rhyme. Next example will be some alliteration. It will say, Piper Parabo and the Polly Perrette needs to push back the pitch on the Princess and the Pauper project. So lots of alliteration. Let's hear it.
Piper Parabo y Polly Perrette necesitan preparar paparazzis para su próximo proyecto.
Perfect. So they kept those proper nouns. That was their strategy. And then they also found words that convey the same meaning that also start with a P to preserve that alliteration. The next one, we're going to hear the English first. Here we go. This one is the hardest one in my opinion because it conveys really important information about the situation. So they have to convey with this sentence, with this tongue twister, that it is a mystery, it's a caper, it includes killer whales. There was a jail fail, someone failed to put somebody in jail, and it includes the person Jill Pill. So let's see what they did. They omitted it. That was their translation strategy. They omitted it completely, but it's a give or take thing with translating humor. So they took away that humor aspect, the trabalengua, and they left the meaning intact, which was the best strategy for this. The next example, it is a malapropism. So it's going to say, if you're going to kick me to the curb just because you're capitalist swine and you want to see your way of life destroyed, well, so be it. Or should I say, Soviet, because the guy is a communist. Here's the Spanish version.
Pero si pensáis tirarme a la cuneta solo porque os creéis todos unos cerdos capitalistas y queréis ver cómo destruís vuestro modo de vida, rehuso. O debería decir, rehuso.
Perfect way to translate that phrase. They found an equivalent wordplay with the same exact meaning, rehuso with reuso. Well, it's not exactly the same meaning, but because reuso is like I refuse, so be it is it doesn't mean refuse. He's saying like, okay, whatever. But the same wordplay is intact and the meaning like Russian, Soviet, that is intact. So perfect example of transcreating or translating the phrase with finding an equivalent wordplay in the target language. Next one will be orthographic play. He says the tooth, the whole tooth, and nothing but the tooth. And then the second character says, not too thabby, Judah. And so both of them have wordplay in their lines. Here we go. Here's the Spanish version.
Al dente, solo al dente y nada más que al dente. Se ve muy completo.
Sorprendente, Judah.
Sí. También quería hablar contigo.
Okay, so Judah, the first person that spoke, said the tooth, the whole tooth, and nothing but the tooth. That is obviously a reference to the court phrase, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We don't get that reference that creates humor, but we do get the second one. She says sorprendiente. So she says diente in the same way that she does in the first, where she says not too thabby, Judah. So they omitted the first wordplay. That was their first strategy. And the second one, they found an equivalent wordplay with different words, but it was the same sort of pun using diente. So meaning preserved, first wordplay omitted, second pun preserved, still gets the laugh out of the audience. Okay, next one is a potty pun, if you will. It says, I'd like you to join me on the high seas as my number 2. And I don't mean that number 2. Let's see what the Spanish version says.
Querría que vinieras al alta como mi segundo en aguas mayores. Y no me refiero a ese tipo de aguas. ¿Cómo?
So this person found a similar phrase in Spanish, aguas, that they used to revert to pee. So, and then they used that pun to create a similar potty pun with, instead of using number 2 as their pun, they used high seas, altas aguas, as their pun. Okay, I'm running out of time, but I do want to talk about one that is really good. Here we go. Hot cock on a rock is something that somebody said to mean like, oh my goodness. And it's not an established phrase in English, but the translator found an established phrase that gave the same sort of meaning of surprise and shock, which is por las barbas de mi abuelo. And that's an established phrase in Spanish that means my heavens or my goodness. So honestly, that is probably the best example of transcreation that I have here. There are a lot of other good examples, but you can look at those whenever you'd like. And here are my preguntas. Thank you so much.